Every night, the deadbolt slides into place. We lock our cars, fortify our computer networks with passwords, and scan our environment for the next threat. We are deeply wired to anticipate danger. We've normalized this hypervigilance to the point where protecting me and mine at all costs is considered a moral virtue. It feels like the only responsible way to survive in a world where injury and loss lurk around every corner. This diagram illustrates the origin of that survival instinct, mapping back to the biblical narrative of Genesis 3. Humans were presented with two paths: operate within God's open, abundant network of wisdom, or trust their own limited perspective and build a closed loop. They chose their own perspective. Inside that closed loop, fear immediately takes over. When you detach from an infinite source of provision, resources become scarce. You end up with a closed system defined by competition, injury, and eventual death, where everything decays into dust. Our entire modern concept of security is built on this specific foundation. It relies on isolation and the perpetual assumption that someone else is coming to take what we have. Jesus steps directly into this dangerous, hyper-vigilant environment with a command that directly contradicts human instinct. He tells his followers to seek first the kingdom of God over their own personal security. Hearing that in a hostile world causes immediate cognitive dissonance. Prioritizing generosity and love when everyone around you is hoarding resources sounds naive. It sounds functionally suicidal. We have to ask if Jesus is simply playing the role of an untouchable hero, doing something no normal person can replicate, or if he is offering a realistic, executable strategy for human survival right now. To test his strategy, we first need to decode the practical mechanics of what he actually meant when he talked about a kingdom. In a first-century Jewish context, a kingdom was not a floating spiritual metaphor. It was a tangible political reality on earth. It had real citizens, a reigning monarch, and a distinct economic system. Standard human empires secure safety through military might, forcefully funneling resources upward while the base remains empty. But Jesus flattens this pyramid. His kingdom's security is rooted in mutual love, where resources flow horizontally. He actively modeled this structure throughout his life. He rejected every selfish method of gaining personal security, refused to accumulate wealth, and completely abandoned violence. The ultimate pressure test of this system happens in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus possessed the same biological mandate to survive we do, pleading for his life, yet he consciously chose to override his own pulse, suffering rather than retaliating, to prioritize God's will. He proved that prioritizing love and trusting God's provision can actually override our deepest biological instinct for self-preservation. We can see this new operating system tested in the wild by looking at the early Christian community in Acts chapter 2. They were living in a highly dangerous environment, surrounded by crime, poverty, and an oppressive military empire. The threats they faced were identical to ours, yet their behavior completely broke the standard human pattern. Instead of fortifying their homes and hoarding supplies, they abandoned fearful self-preservation. They pooled their property and radically shared their resources with anyone in need. This micro-society survived by refusing to view life as something to be aggressively secured. They received life as an ongoing daily gift from God, and they acted as a mechanism of grace, distributing that gift to their neighbors. The early church proved that Matthew 6:33 is a highly effective, executable strategy. It builds deep community resilience in the middle of a hostile world. This brings us to the most frequently misunderstood part of Jesus' command, the promise that all these things will be added to you. This diagram maps a standard, short human lifespan against the infinite timeline of God's kingdom. Jesus isn't offering a quick-fix security policy for immediate physical safety. Jesus himself lived in extreme poverty and suffered a brutal murder. Followers will still face unmet needs, injustice, and violence. The immediate threats do not vanish. Jesus is making a long-term cosmological bet. He is pointing toward a whole-world restoration, meaning absolute provision and perfect safety arrive when the kingdom is entirely complete. The biblical authors describe this future as an Eden-like reality, a guaranteed, fully restored world where corruption, threat, and death are permanently eradicated. Trusting in that guaranteed future changes how you operate today. The Apostle Paul faced imprisonment and execution, But his love for Jesus and his neighbors overpowered his fear of the blade. The threat was real, but love compelled his actions, not fear. When you adopt this mindset, you stop competing for resources. You stop exhausting yourself securing a future you cannot control. True security is the realization that God is in control of the cosmic timeline. You are already safe, which leaves you completely free to love generously without looking over your shoulder. Seeking the kingdom means unlocking the door. It is the choice to act today as if the promised world of perfect security has already arrived.